happy and so excited to have a fast, dear friend in the making, Sylvia in Nzekwu. Close. She is from
Yes,
Nigeria,
yes.
Africa.
Yeah,
Yay! We
yes.
originally met, she remembers the exact date, which I love. So does my nephew remembers exact dates too. June 2nd at around 7:45 p.m. We met on a discovery call. So Sylvia was looking at different programs to really enhance the work that she's doing. But just to give her a formal introduction before we dive into everything, Sylvia is the principal and founder called Sean Consulting, and they specialize in professional services, administration, HR, trade development, and regional integration. And they also work with law firms to infuse best practices in the legal services sector. She also does a lot of dynamic speaking and hosts and creates different training programs and events to help achieve just that. Different types of things with Sylvia today. I just felt like our first conversation, you were such a wealth of sage wisdom. And I remember telling you, I felt like I was at home and you like just almost reminded me of my mom in some ways. And so I'll just kind of pause there and say, welcome, Sylvia. It's such a pleasure to have you with me here today.
Kat, thank you so much for the invitation. We've been waiting for this, and I really, really am glad to be on this podcast with you. Like you say, this was last year, June last year, when our paths crossed. And it was 30 minutes of absolute interesting conversation. It was almost like 8 p.m. my time in Nigeria, but it looked as if we had been talking for the whole day. And I'm glad we had that conversation. It's been really fun interacting with you and connecting with you. And I want to say thank you, Kat, for reaching out all
Oh,
the time, finding out what are you up to, Sylvia? How can I help? What can I do to make your work easier? That means a lot, Kat, and that's special. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank
oh,
you.
well, thank you. Sometimes you don't even realize how special something is you're doing for the other receiving end until you hear it. So I really appreciate
Yes,
that.
yes.
And I
And I'm
think
not just saying it. It's true. I'm not just, it's the truth.
I feel like there's just something about when you connect in really interesting but enriching ways and you're connecting all these dots, it just creates this fire within me to continue to spot those things that really resonated with what we had been surfacing up and what you're up to. And to me, it just feels like second nature. And if I feel like if it's just a few minutes of my day, I think it's nice to let people know when something reminded you of them and something that might just add some boost or inspiration to what you're
Yes.
doing. And I know one of the things we really bonded over throughout the course of getting to know each other more is you speak so poetically too, and I wanna quote what you said, and I'm probably gonna say it horrible, but it was something along the line of like creating this oasis of just enriching conversations and how can we foster more knowledge transfers not only in our immediate communities, but I
Mm.
really look forward to learning from and what some of your blueprints are that you've established there in Africa and the region that you're in Nigeria. I just feel like the world we face a lot of similar challenges and we find a lot of creative ways to solve for them, and
Yes.
it's really wonderful to feel like you can hit the fast forward button on something when you're able to learn from others that might have tackled something similar. And I feel like that is like at the core of what you do. It seems like everything you've shared with me and that I've read
Mm.
about the work that you're doing, it's really all about like understanding some of these big challenges or opportunities and helping align your community and build those relationships and get the right resources in place to help them make it into a solution and the desired state that they're hoping for. So, but before we dive into that, I would like to just do a tiny little tour of Africa with you for a few minutes. I think I was kidding about this in my intro or when we were warming up, but I'm a naive American. Like I know I love, like you can tell with my outfit today, I'm drawn to the prints. I love some of the art. I love what I've learned about Africa from some of the different traditions and the food and
Mm.
just mainly for me it's just been documentaries or like National Geographic. So I'd love for you to just have a few moments to really showcase what makes where you're from so special.
Yes. Uh, Thank you, Kath. I'm going to put on my glasses because I need to see what you're wearing clearly. This is beautiful, Kath. You
Thank
have on
you.
African print. No, no, really. And I think as when we were talking earlier, the roles are reversed. You're in the African print, and I really like that, celebrating the continent. And I have a lot of the African stuff on my wall, celebrating the continent as well.
Oh, beautiful.
But Africa is made up of 54 countries. So you have the northern part, the southern, the eastern, and the western part of Africa. I come from West Africa, a country called Nigeria, and we're about 200 million people in Nigeria. So that situates things in your mind,
Wow.
how big it is, probably one of the largest on the continent. I'm proud of the continent because I believe that there's so much we have to offer the world. There's a lot of richness in terms of nature, in terms of culture, in terms of a lot of what has gone on. And maybe you've heard about the safaris. So a lot of the safaris are in Africa and people come, those are tourist attractions. For Nigeria, we're so versatile in our ways. We are big on music. I'm sure you've heard quite a few of the Nigerian Afro music.
Yes.
That is taking the world by storm today. We have a lot of African print, similar to what you're wearing. Textile is big for us. We love our fashion. We love our foods, our cuisine. We grow organic stuff in Africa. And so you would find out that a lot of people are realizing that, you know what, let's go back to nature and let's get back into how things originally should be, using the right
Yeah.
things to cook. We have a lot of herbs, we have a lot of spices, and that gives the cuisine a different flavor. So what you're finding is people are using the giftings from the motherland to actually expand different things that they're into. We have a lot of talent in Africa as well, a lot of talent. So you've heard of the youth. Africa is filled with a lot of youth, and they're very vibrant, and they do quite a bit of stuff. Nigeria has exported a lot of its people to America, where you are. So we have loads of doctors, we have loads of professionals in America. So I am really proud to be a Nigerian. I'm proud to come from Africa, as they say, is the last frontier, the emerging market. And that's why you're seeing a lot of people having interest in Africa. We have a lot of minerals in Africa. So you have diamonds. I'm sure you've heard maybe what you're wearing, some part of the jewelry you're wearing, something may come from different things. So there's richness of resources in Africa. So thank you for celebrating us through your outfit, Kat. It looks good. It really, really looks nice on you. And it suits your complexion as well. So thanks a lot for that.
Oh, thank you. Because I told you I was a little nervous. I'm like, I love wearing it, but then I'm like, is it cheesy that I'm wearing it, or is? But I really just felt like I just love everything. I've had a
No.
chance to learn about your culture, and I thought it was a fun way to celebrate it. So thank you, because I just love this dress so much, and
Yes.
I think it's good
Thank
for us
you.
to
I'm
learn.
honored. I'm
Yeah,
honored,
I think
Kat.
outside of like the safaris and maybe some of the foods, I don't know if everyone really realizes just how rich it is and some of its exports. And that kind of brings me into one of the first questions that I'd asked you when we were preparing for today, and that was about what one of the biggest challenges were that you faced in work, and that you do, and how did you overcome
Mhm.
it to reach a successful result? And you talked at that time, this was like earlier in your career, but in the midst of a depressed economic situation, this is when Nigeria law firms had to rethink and restructure how they were delivering their services, because one of your largest industries, they had kind of made a shift. They had started moving more towards like the oil rich prosperous industry, and turned away from some of their other exports. And I'd just love to hear more about your method. Am I mixing two stories together? But I want to say anyway, you were really looking at emerging opportunities in a depressed economy. Yeah, I just taken away from there because I thought it was a fascinating story. You were at Icon Limited, and you worked with Mr. Chris Uda, and just the way he was able to help you guys design
Yes.
out that
Yes.
roadmap.
Mr. Chris
Tell me
Udall.
more about how
Yes.
you guys were able to
Yes.
tackle that challenge when there was such a big shift in the
Yes.
industry.
That
This
yes. This was at a time, like I said, it happened when Nigeria was, we had done a lot. We had, spent a lot of time and moving away from the agricultural sector into the oil sector. We had discovered oil. So the traditional exports of cocoa, rubber, and, all those different agricultural products were no longer attractive. It seemed more attractive to focus on petroleum and oil. And so we found that in the country that, even in the bank at that time, we wanted a way of embracing that whole agricultural sector, which is really the resource area in the continent. And my department was charged with that responsibility of revamping the non-oil sector. So my boss then,
Cool.
he's of blessed memory now. And this was me just straight out of university, and I had joined the bank. And so you can imagine it was very good foundation for me, and it stuck. That was the foundation, and it was absolutely wonderful. And we had this goal, and our goal was we were given the task to develop a roadmap. How would the bank develop the non-oil export sector? How would you find clients who were exporting agricultural products or any other thing that wasn't oil? How would you now give credit to those clients to build their businesses? That, in a nutshell, was the brief. And so we didn't even know how to go about it. But my boss was a brilliant thinker. And I think that was my first interaction with problem solving from scratch, where you don't have anything to work with, but your ideas and the belief in yourself and the fact that it can be done, even when everybody else says no. And so we had a team of maybe we were about 10 in the department, and we had to come up with different ideas. And that was the first time I heard AI. All ideas are in AI. And that was my boss's philosophy. He didn't discount anybody's ideas. If you came up with an idea, he would look at it. But he would encourage you to defend the idea you're bringing. And everybody had a goal at looking at how to develop that whole brand in the bank. And before long, we found ourselves becoming research assistants because he asked us, go out and find research into what kinds of products are exportable that are not oil. And we thought, where do we start from? But that was a beautiful exercise because it made us realize that we could export cow horns and bones. We could export scrap metal. We could export the agricultural produce. We could also export our foods, Nigerian foods that had taken, a new dimension in the way things were done. And so that became a different way of solving the problem. And before long, we found that we had clients who were actually interested in exporting those kinds of products. And we built a base of clients that we could fund their transactions. And we found the bank grow from almost like nothing to being probably the main export bank in Nigeria at the time. And that was all thanks to
That
Mr.
is
Chris
such an
Udo.
incredible story.
But
Sorry,
one
go
of the
ahead.
things he actually did, which was amazing, was one of the things he did, and he was a bridge builder. And we found out that in problem solving, you can't stand on your own. You need to reach out to other people who share ideas with you, but more importantly, maybe others who don't even have the same ideas with you. So the task is, how do you convince them to join your path of reasoning? And we watched him do that effortlessly. And one of the things he tried to do was partnering with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And this is the body that up till today is charged with the responsibility of setting up the trade fair in Nigeria, particularly in Lagos. And one of the things that Mr. Udo decided with the Chamber of Commerce was, why don't we have an area that is cut out in the exhibition center that is strictly for export purposes? Everybody who would exhibit in that center would be people who are exporting their products. All the banks that would take a stand there would be banks that are financing export. And so that whole concept of the export pavilion became a flagship. of not just my bank, but also the Lagos Chamber of Commerce at the time. And that was amazing because we found that indeed a lot could be done to revamp that whole sector. I wish we could have that same kind of drive happening, because has that really translated into something of value? I think there's hope for that to happen a lot more, but it can be done. And that for me was problem solving by somebody who had shown us the rudiments and how not to be afraid to tread where others do not want to tread. And I think that mindset is, very, very useful in the world of design and, creating experiences for people. So that in a nutshell
Absolutely.
was that my experience with that.
Such a wonderful story. And like going back to like how can we look at those blueprints and replicate some of that in other regions where they have some form of displacement in work, or like I was just, my mind was going everywhere when you were speaking. Like even in our country right now, I feel like I think a lot of people are waking up that we need to eat more natural and organic, and that the mass produced
Yes.
food that's easily accessible and that's the cheapest and that's marketed the most is making us sick. And I think, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm just not connecting with the community enough, but you're inspiring me. And the story of Mr. Chris Uda of daring to tread in areas where not a lot of people are treading, because I think it's easy to notice the problem
Yes.
once you notice it and complain about it and say, I don't like this, but to actually start to connect with others in your community or even on a state level or a country level to say, we want to start combining our ideas and our resources to come up with a solution. You beautifully
Yes.
told that story about how you built the bridges and you were able to spot individuals that cared to be a part of the solution and would put some of their own skin and effort and financing in the game, and that the bank was willing to take that risk. And I think the risk gets reduced when you see how aligned individuals are and how much they genuinely care to be a part of that
Yes.
solution. And you get the feeling that they're going to work tirelessly day and night in order to get to that solution space that everyone's believing in. So I think the more that they're aligned in the vision and aligned in what they can all do to complement one another's efforts to get to the end goal, it lowers some of the risk for banks to go into some uncharted territories where just because no one else has been willing to look at this or do something doesn't mean we shouldn't be the first. And that's very much a Michigan kind of attitude
Exactly.
too, of like, we're big on innovation and the revolution of the
Really?
automotive. And now we're getting really big on EV, which is funny because the cobalt is very important, and I know we're relying on all of those charging stations and batteries to have something that's coming from Africa too. But I digress a little bit. But I already want to do like a follow-up brainstorm with you of like, if I was to spot like 5 things I'm passionate about that I'd like to like influence in my community, what is something similar that you've already done or that you've achieved that we could like build upon and just have you as a thinking partner? So we'll think about that more later because we only have such a limited time today. I'm so sad that we can't just talk all afternoon. So that was the one. That one really stood out to me. I just loved that story about how you originally became a problem solver, and just the grit and the courage to think outside the box and to come up with ideas, and that you had a leader that really created like that psychological safety that there are no bad ideas. If it's coming to you with an innate instinct or an observation that you genuinely feel about, he really made everyone feel comfortable to share so freely, and that he was receiving and listening and providing advice so freely. Because I think when you're younger in your career especially, you can get a little nervous of, oh, I don't know if that's going to sound stupid, or if I'm going to sound inexperienced.
Exactly.
I just really am so happy that early on in your career out of college, and by the way, you went to Queens College, and I'm not super familiar with Queens College.
Yes.
Is that one of the bigger universities there?
That was high school.
Oh,
But it's one of the main high school. Yes, that was high school. And so from the age of
wow.
10
You
to
were
the
doing
age
that
of
in high school?
17, 18.
Wow. Sylvia, that's
No, I mean
incredible.
that was Queen's College. That was my high school. But I went to university in Lagos in Nigeria, and that was after high school. Yeah, so all my
Wow.
schooling has been in Nigeria. apart from courses
Now,
and
can
every
we
other thing
start
I've
out?
done outside the country. But
Can we pause there for a second too? Because like here in America, if you come from like a less privileged area and not from a very wealthy family, or even if in my case, I was just like low income growing up, um, I had one option, and it was we all have a public school available, but not all public schools are created equal. So everyone has the chance to go and learn how to read and write, and at least get the basics down. What is that? What did that look like in Nigeria for you in terms of like your path to education?
okay, so education for me in Nigeria was really, it was something that my parents were very, very particular about for my siblings and I. The kind of education we got. I wouldn't say we were from a very wealthy family, but we were big on values and getting the right kind of education, because that is a major legacy. And so in terms of the schools we went to, my siblings and I, right from maybe middle school, primary, as in elementary, it was one of the top schools. It was Corona School. In those days, Corona was one of the big schools in Lagos, in Nigeria. And after that, did the first, up till when you were 10, 11, and then moved into what you would call in America, like middle school, like sixth grade and all that. And that was when I went to Queen's College. So from the age of 10 till I did my high school there as well, till I was about 18. And that was Queen's College. And Queen's College was the girls' school in those days. One of the Unity schools, created in 1927. That was when the school was actually created. So Queen's College is quite, one of the old schools. And we had a, brother school, King's College. They were created in 1919, I think. So my mom went to Queen's College. My dad went to King's College. So this was just following in the tradition of our parents. And then when I finished at Queen's College and my siblings and then I went to University of Lagos, and that was where I studied business administration, other kinds of degrees and exposures. And a lot of my training after that basic training and university was maybe abroad. And my time in banking exposed me to training in Germany, in Dublin, in different parts of, the world, just so that you get a lot of capacity to deal with different kinds of things. So education, we're big on education in Nigeria. And you will find out that people are not just ready to settle for just primary education. You would see them going on wanting to get a master's, a PhD, and many other degrees. So education is major for us. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. And I love that it was such a like your mother and father went to that school, and that it was important for you guys to go to the school. And I know I do want to talk about that a little bit later. Like one of the things that's most important to both of us is that knowledge transfer and like carrying on that legacy. But one good real life
Yes.
example that you shared with me earlier, which I absolutely loved, and you really inspired me with the story that you just spoke about earlier before we started about your niece and how she's about to go off to school. She's 12 years old, and she'll be in a boarding school, so she'll be away from home for the first time for an extended period of time. And you came up with this idea and concept to run her through like a life training program that you created yourself. Walk me through that a little bit, because I just want to celebrate it out of the gate that like I feel like I take such a pride in being an aunt, but I sometimes feel like I know I could be doing more. I look back at like what my grandma did and what my mom did for me, which was similar to some of the things that you said you did with her for the week that you had her. Yeah. But I just feel like I need to be stepping it up, and I think you're kind of giving me a blueprint there. Like, so I definitely want to just share that with the audience if whoever tunes in for this one. Tell me a little bit more about that week that you have it there and what you curated for.
Yes. Oh, Kat, thank you. That was a good one. She was getting ready to leave home for the first time, going to boarding school. And so I had had a conversation with her parents, her brother. Her father is my brother, my only brother. We're all girls. He's the only boy, and her mom. And I said, you know what? I'd like her to come and spend a
Oh,
week
wow.
with me, because I think that there's so much to give. I have two boys. My sons are all, they went through boarding school as well, and they're in their 20s, graduated, one of them, and the other still in university. And these were the kinds of skills I taught them. Oh, and it's based on what we learned. I went to boarding school. All my siblings went to boarding school. So it was a beautiful experience that I thought it would be nice for her to experience as well. And so I said, we're going to simulate it, and it's going to be something that would be like an immersion program. And so she arrived with her parents. From the day when she came in through the door, everything was set up for her. She received a welcome pack, and she got some orientation. The next few days would entail in the presence of her parents. If you wanted to ask any questions, so that you're clear about what will happen, showed her to the room and told her this is what is going to happen. And well, her parents were still there, because I know there is also the feeling of homesickness. So I wanted her parents to be there when I was sharing that with her, so she wouldn't feel too lonely. And so after the parents left, I said, we're starting fresh tomorrow. Day starts at 7 in the morning. You'll be expected to wake up and have your devotion, make your bed, tidy your room, and get ready to start the day. And so part of what she had in her welcome pack, she had a Bible, she had a journal, and she had crayons and different things that she could use. And she had toiletries as well. All that was packed in a welcome pack for her. And I said, so first day, that was how it was. And then after that, I built in a wellness activity. We had to go on walks. We had to do exercises. And I said, we'll do our walks before 8 in the morning, when the sunshine, the first sun ray, which captures the vitamin D in our bodies. I said, that is when we would go for our walks. And we would do that and come back to start the day. And when we got back from our walks, she was expected to, after having her bath, make her breakfast, because I wanted to test how well she could cook. I find that a lot of people just go through life, especially in the younger generation, used to things being done for them. But I thought, no, you are going to learn to do things on your own. And cooking is one of those skills. I have boys, but they cook. In fact, one of my sons has a cooking channel on YouTube because he's interested in that. And both of them cook very well. And all my nieces and nephews, they all do cook well because my siblings have instilled that in them. And so she would make her breakfast, and then we would start the day. We had sewing lessons. We had how to iron, how to fold clothes, how to arrange the locker. I also got her to read Moved My Cheese. I said you would read the book and you would have your journal and make notes from what you've learned. She had downtime as well. You have every day you could spend an hour of your doing what you like. I wouldn't interfere in that time. And so I just wanted to see how she made use of her time. But throughout, no gadgets, no telephones. You could speak with your parents at the end of the day on my phone. But this is to just downplay the whole thing of, the cell phone that has taken a life in the lives of children today. And I said, we just have to start from there. And at the end of the day, she would come back and we would have a recap of how the day went, what were the learning points for today, and then I would share with her what the next day would bring. And part of what we did was also to go to visit a museum, an art gallery, because I said, this is all part of the education. So you must recognize that it's not just about watching TV and all the cartoons and everything in life. And so we went on this exhibition, and she came back home and wrote about her experience there and what she liked and what she learned. And so the final time of her 1 week stay, she was to come up with cooking a meal for her parents when they came to pick her to go back home. And she did all that all by herself. She created the menu, what she wanted to make. All the ingredients were there. And she cooked the meal. She set the table, because I am big on presentation. I believe not just cooking, but presenting is also important in terms of the colors, in terms of, being very creative. So my creative flair comes not just at work, but also in terms of my surroundings. And so I told her, pick out your serviette, make up nice designs with it. And her mom came to pick her, and her mom ate the food that she made. It was such a lovely time. And every day I gave her parents an update on how she had fared with pictures. I sent pictures to them. This is what she did today. And so I learned a lot myself, even in that experience. And I found out that, you know what, I think I should actually set up an institute for that age group of people going into school and learning how to leave home.
Yeah, or at the very least, a program.
Yes.
Honestly, like even if it was like a webinar-based program, like I know me as an aunt, I think I know like 10 aunts that would sign up right now because
Yes.
we want to honor that job that we do. To like you're saying, to pass on some of the legacy and some of those
Hmm.
lessons to prepare them for life, and so many wonderful lessons you built into 1 week. And I feel like if adults even were starting their days from such a their body and calming their nervous system and getting out in the sun and getting the fresh air and getting grounded
Yes.
and having some quiet time to pause and reflect and be intentional about that moment and about your day, the amount of people that would be happier going into their day and more functional once they get to meetings and at work and whatever they're going to do. I think just being that in tuned with your environment and your surrounding and how
Yes.
you're the captain of your own ship and how to run that ship. You gave her a sense of order and a sense of that she can take responsibility and pride of that type of responsibility. It's not just an
Hmm.
annoying chore that you have to do as a kid while you're at the tone for your living
Exactly.
space and your mindset into each day, and
Yes.
even to teach her how to be a wonderful host and some life skills. Like I did, you, it's so funny, we're doing this podcast today, but every time I stitch, and I'm a horrible sewer for the most part, but I can. My mother and my grandma were very
Wow.
good seamstresses. They could make something like this. But I had buttons that were off, and I had
Yes.
a hem in my pants that had fallen,
Exactly.
the quick fixes, but
Yes.
each time I get out my needle and my thread and I'm stitching, I think
Exactly.
of them like I can
Exactly.
take care of that. I can take care of that. Like it's a good sense of pride. I think it builds
Mm.
confidence. You feel self-sufficient. You're
Exactly.
saving money. You're
You
being
know,
resourceful. You're not like, oh, it's broken, I'm gonna throw it out. It's just so many good life lessons wrapped into
yes.
one, and to get her reflecting on each day and
Yeah.
what did I learn and what inspired me and what might I want to do with this thing that I've learned next. You just tell me if you want a thinking partner. I would definitely think through. I know you're thinking big, like even like a university type
And
program,
maybe
or
not. No,
but even
really.
if you
No,
were to
you're
start
right.
with a
Yes.
little PDF pamphlet and like a few
Mm-hmm.
hour webinar to inspire other aunts and uncles to do this for
Thank
their nieces
you.
and
Thank
nephews. I
you.
think it's
Yes.
awesome. Well, you're inspiring me to be a better aunt. I just had my nieces last weekend, and they're
Oh,
the same age. They're, well, 13 and one's about to be 12. I cannot believe it. She's just the sweetest thing. She's but they we I took them to the salon. Their moms are letting them dye their hair now. And I took them to a nice salon, and their moms were with me, and we did dinner, and we were together for the weekend. And but like this is like meaningful on a whole other level of just teaching them some of these things. It's super cool. And I liked the part too
yes.
that I think made
Yes.
the parents very
Yes.
happy, of daily updates and pictures of like, here's what we did today and here's how it's going.
Oh, thank you,
Oh,
Kat.
what an
Thank you.
amazing thing you did to honor your family. I just love that. Okay, so I have another question. So, what is something you wish you would have known in your
I think that I'm someone that is I'm very particular about how things are run. I'm used to things being done properly. And so when things don't run the way they're supposed to run, sometimes you can get a bit flustered. But I found that even if life throws curveballs at you, take those curveballs, because in those curveballs, there are lessons to be learned. It doesn't matter how difficult or unpalatable a situation is. Even if it is not successful in your own eyes, there are lessons to be learned from that. It's a bit difficult to process sometimes, but I think that that is something that was when the minute I was able to reach that point of understanding, I found it liberating in my mind that, you know what? Don't beat yourself over the head. So it hasn't worked out, so what? At the end of the day, look, when they say, the idiomatic expression that says every cloud has a silver lining. So look for the silver lining and work with that silver lining and draw strength from that.
Mm. I love that. And there
Yeah.
is so many strength from that. There's such good,
Yeah.
almost like cliche sayings that we hear so much, like the cloud has a silver lining. And I love that phrase of turning success inside out. One thing for me too, because it can, I think your ego gets in the way, your pride gets in the way. If something doesn't work out the way you were hoping, or you didn't get the chance that you were hoping, or whatever the case is, you tried for something and you failed, like it can be very easy to slip into a negative state of mind of like, because you don't like that feeling. You don't like that occurred. But I always feel like when you can see the silver lining, in addition to what you were just saying, which is so lovely, is like, um, it's freeing up your energy and your mind and your time to spot something that may really excite you, or that you might even
Yeah.
find more fulfillment and joy in. If you get stuck in being negative and down for
Exactly.
too much, it's harder to kind of notice
Exactly.
those other doors that were open that whole time, or a path that you could be pursuing, or something right in front of your face. And now that you've got a moment to reflect on, the quicker you can go into a positive mindset, the quicker you'll spot some of that stuff. Because a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm just down on my luck and it never works out for me. Well, there's likely a lot of things right in front of your face that would have worked out nicely. You just were not in a place to see it and go for it
Yes.
because you're too busy being bummed about the last failure. I don't know, just a thought. And then another question I had was, what is some of the greatest knowledge? Oh, and I loved your answer for
I'll
this. Like,
give you
you go
more.
above and beyond. You remind me of me in that way. Like, I give you what you asked for and maybe just a little bit more. But I give you a little bit more because I feel like if it sparks something in you and you think that little bit more is going to
Exactly.
add to it and be
Exactly.
something you can build upon even more, like do it while the iron is hot. Like do it while it's flowing. Like why hold on to that for another day? But it was all about what are some of the greatest knowledge transfers that need to occur for the next generation. And you kind of answered this a little bit, even with what you did with your nieces. But and then how do you think we can best transfer that knowledge in impactful, practical ways? And I loved not only your knowledge transfer options, but what you mentioned for methods. I'm like, I feel like that could be an
Yeah.
amazing workshop.
I thought I needed to expatiate a bit more and think about it the well-being. And so in coming up with the responses, as I came up with the responses, I found that there were so many. I kept thinking of the generation we're talking about. This is not just our generation. This is like the millennials, the Gen Zs. And so I find out that I'm coming up with programs that will suit each generation, as it were. And so my responses were with that in mind. And I remember saying that the next generation, they're big on innovation. They're big on technology. They're big on creativity. But more importantly, they're big on learning in non-traditional ways. So where we're used to sitting in conferences and all, they're not interested in that. So you must be able to, develop programs and products and methods that will speak to their interests. And so things like what we're doing now, Kat, the podcast, I know that a lot of them like those kinds of things. And I must say kudos to you, Kat. You're doing a great job running these podcasts. I mean, I'm like, wow, I've watched all the different ones you've run. And I'm thinking, you know what, Kat, you're really onto something big. You are. And that's it. It takes a lot of courage because at the end of the
Oh,
day, you're keeping at it, and that's important. So I
oh,
know that
thank
this
you.
next generation, they're big on technology and they're very creative in the way they think. So things like video recordings, if you
Yeah.
look at what you're seeing around, many of them, even the next generation, they're doing a lot of video recordings that showcase the skills that they have or things that they want to share out there. So if you want them to learn in the same way, even in the office environment, and pass information on to them, go to the same kind of products that they're used to and develop something around that. So who says that you can develop videos around what they're used to, even speaking about the work that they're doing in the office? You can have workshops and webinars and chat platforms. They love conversing a lot, the next generation. They love sharing their ideas. So create chat platforms where they actually have an opportunity to share their perspectives and come up with things that they can do differently. Where you put them in
Yeah.
that kind of setting, chances are you're likely going to get them to imbibe what you want to share with them. I also feel that when you entrench a culture of learning in any organization, where there's a culture of learning in the organization, it's easier for you to talk about knowledge sharing, because then
Those
that
are such
becomes
good
something that
point.
is very
Yeah.
important for people to want to embrace. And then it empowers the employees as well. And so coaching is also one. And then, shadowing opportunities. I think that that is a very strong one. Emerging leaders, where you're actually paired with a boss who has a lot of skills. At the beginning of my boss of blessed
Yeah.
memory in the bank, Mr. Chris Udo. And I remember we actually used to go on marketing calls with him to learn and see, watch him interact with clients and how he did those kinds of, how those conversations came about. And those were very, very profound ways of learning. You learn how to talk, you learn how to market, you learn how to, speak to people and how to negotiate different situations with your clients. I think that if the younger generation are actually paired with leaders that enable them have those shadowing opportunities, it's one very, almost like having a front row seat at leadership events. That is mind blowing for them. And before long, they will embrace what you're trying to share with them. So for me, knowledge sharing is something that I'm very, and of course, the whole area of mentoring. I really am big on that. It's one way of, just generally getting them to imbibe the right values and the right methods of doing things. So yes, generational diversity is big and we should embrace it. We should embrace it. There's a book I was reading recently. I know you like reading books, Kat. So I actually brought it to the podcast. And it's about who you raised us, now work with us. You raised us, now work with us. And it's by Lauren Reichling, I think, or Rickling. But he talks about working with the millennials and the kinds of strategies you should, adopt in building strong teams and workplace teams with the millennials. So those kinds of things, it's important.
But you just mentioned one that was such a lovely answer. And I'm already thinking that needs to be its own like program and series too, because what you said in terms of meeting the next generation where they are in ways.
It's the point of transferring knowledge in a way that is not interesting to the person you're transferring knowledge to. They will shut you out in their minds. So you must speak the language that they speak.
Right.
You must craft the products that are
Right.
useful to them and interesting. If not, you've lost them. And so that with that in mind, I felt things like what you're doing, Kat, the podcast. And I said it then, you're doing a great job. Because at the end of the day, going through the podcast on a regular basis, covering all the topics you do, interacting with people, hoping that technology is good to us, it better be good, or this technology. At the end of the day, those things are important. But you're dealing with a generation that they're digital natives. Technology comes naturally to them. So they would naturally flow with any medium that has to do with technology. So podcasts would be high on the list for them.
Mm.
A lot of them are into creating content. They're content creators. When you look at what you see on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, that is the space they're used to playing in. And so who says you cannot create videos that would speak to the issues you want to transfer knowledge about and use those as ways in which you can share information with them? So create video recordings for upload on YouTube. And these are things that can be accessible even from the corporate environment. You could also, first of all, is ensure that you have a culture of learning in the organization. Once there's that culture that is entrenched of learning, chances are people will gravitate towards whatever you want them to learn. And then, of course, that whole area of coaching and mentoring is very, very important. But the one that I found interesting was where you say, you know what? You have the skill set. We want you to take a front row seat as leaders and shadow opportunities for emerging leaders. So it's important to identify those in the organization that are fast trackers and those that have the skills that you want to get them to imbibe. And I gave the example of my boss of blessed memory, Mr. Udo, in the banking days, where we would accompany him on calls to clients, and just watch how he would interact with the clients, how he would ask questions or navigate through knotty issues, or just come up with ideas and even negotiate different kinds of terms for, financing of their products. That is a very, very important way of learning, where you're actually watching an older boss or an older colleague, actually display their skills in marketing and all that. And I know that those shadowing opportunities are important for the younger generation to imbibe. The example I gave of my niece before, that was knowledge transfer, albeit in, like very, very experiential and immersion wise programs. So that in a nutshell. And then, of course, when you had on jobs, not just staying in one job, but because they get bored easily. TVs of people in the next generation, many of them way before in our generation, you could stay in 10 years or 20 years and you look to, to get a long service award. This generation now, no. The minimum, is like 2 years, they're ready to move to the next job. So you have to find a way of keeping them engaged. You have to find a way of making sure that they're interested in the work they're doing. If they stay too long on a particular job, you lose them. So you must make the job interesting and build creativity into their workspace, just so that, they can share the same things with you. So I think that covers different kinds of things we're talking about. And I said also chat platforms. Having chat platforms, I think it's important. They like talking. The next generation, they have an opinion on everything. So you must find a way of bringing that opinion in a positive way into the work environment, create opportunities for them to share their ideas and speak about things that they're passionate about. Not necessarily just about work. Many of them like community things that speak to their altruistic nature. You must find a way of charging that with there. And I think it's something that, even as the older generation, we need to know how to deal with the generation up and coming. And that way you would get a knowledge sharing programs, really going well.
Yeah, I think that's just a phenomenal. I love your answer so much. From meeting them where they are, and like you said, what's the value of transferring the knowledge if we're not transferring it in a way that they like to get information and receive and share information? So I think that part was huge. And then also, I loved your ideas around, working in a few different job roles. The shadowing is huge. It's one thing for us to teach you and tell you what we've learned, but when you can actually experience it right next to someone that's applying and doing and an action, like that's how I learn best. You can explain it all day long to me, but like learning through doing is so transformative, and it resonates with you on a whole other level because you're engaging in how to apply what you're learning. And then I loved everything about the empowering ways to empower the kids in the next generation with that knowledge transfer and the methods that you shared, and then fostering that environment that really encourages a knowledge transfer and mentorship, and really empowering the elders and those that are in the senior positions to be the best people managers and mentors that they can be, where taking pride in and being able to engage with the new up and comers in this way, because at some point you have to pass the torch, and if that torch isn't passed well and you don't have the very best talent or the very best training that they've received, industries could fall, businesses could fall. It's important that there be that harmony there. And I think that was such a great example. We only have 5 minutes left. I'm so sad because I could talk to you forever. I look forward to seeing that book, because I think that book is so in tune with what you and I have been talking about. I don't know if it's a woman thing too. I think women, like I read once that like we only have a finite amount of eggs, and that's all we could ever possibly bring into the world, where men could bring a million things into the world, where I think we care that much more about really taking care of the ones that are here and seeing them and be okay, and that they're going to have a bright, strong future. So I do think Men care about
Yes.
that too, but I think women have like this deep, innate, legacy type instinct within us of like, we've got to make sure this next group is going to be good before we're gone. And so I picture us living a very much longer, healthy life, but
Mhm.
I really feel like there's something very fulfilling and empowering about doing all that we can, having these conversations and inspiring these types of methods and resources and actions to get into play and connecting dots with others that are on that same wavelength that are doing
Mhm.
similar efforts. Because like you were saying earlier, the more we can all
Mhm.
be connected on these things and build those bridges and, share blueprints for similar causes and
Yeah.
similar challenges and goals that we want us, there's just such a power when we're united in those ways.
So many times I am big on daily devotion, reading the Bible, working through the scriptures. I like listening to faith-based songs. The lyrics are very profound. And I find that I draw quite a lot of strength from that as well. And then, of course, meditation and, declaring the scriptures, that has been a lifeline for me. I think that that was my upbringing for my siblings and I, and we're, by God's grace, passing that on to our
Yeah.
children. The world is filled with so much, challenges and pain. You must find a way of anchoring somewhere so that you're actually strong in what you're doing. Moving from day to day, I look around the world today and I see there's so much, war-torn areas. How are people coping? How
Oh,
do you
wonderful.
expect people to even move from one day to the other? There's just so much pain and
Yes.
disappointment. But for me, this is anchor my faith. And I know even I find when for work, even when I face challenges, I just find a scripture that actually
Yeah.
serves the purpose. And I just meditate on that scripture and I find the calmness returning into my system. And I'm actually able to just draw strength from that. So that for me has been a big thing. I'm big on faith. I'm big on faith, Kat.
Me too. Me too. I was also raised in a Christian faith, and I remember vividly praying with my mom and my grandma before bed and first thing in the morning. And like you were saying, and
Mhm.
I don't want to discredit any faith because the Bible is such an old document, and is all of it 100% literal? I don't think so. There's a lot of great historical events in there that astrologers
Mhm.
to this day or archaeologists to this day are like blown away by the accuracy of. But there's so much sage wisdom there. So I encourage anyone, whether it's the Christian faith or maybe it's Buddhism or yogic traditions, there's a lot of universal truths and sage wisdom that exist
Mhm.
across all of those too. But just be like you were saying, being able to calm your mind and be present in the
Mhm.
moment and filled with that grace and love and hope, especially in a world where it can be very easy to access all of the atrocities and pains that are happening along the world, but to keep that sense of grace and hope and
Yes.
faith
Yes.
that love conquers
Yes.
all. And there are just
Exactly.
so much wisdom to be
Exactly.
found. I feel like a lot of the song lyrics that we hear, these that are the most poetic and the most soul felt, that connect with all of us in deep ways, they echo a lot of scripture. If you get really familiar with scripture, you're like, yeah, that particular artist or songwriter put their own twist on it, but the message is the same. And I think that's
Hmm.
another thing I wish we saw more of in our life. Like, I feel like the songs these days, especially in America, I would say
Mhm.
90% of them
Mhm.
are just garbage, in the sense that there's no real soulful, empowering, uplifting, positive message that can bring a
Yes.
sense of calm or peace or connected. It's a lot of like just promoting, debauchery and being a degenerate for the most part, and like just really like aggression. So I think that is a good thought too, that there are going to be moments already in life that shake your
Mhm.
confidence. The more you can surround your mind and your body with the
No,
books that you read, the conversations that you have, the
yes.
meditations or prayers that you do, those are all things that are going to, yeah, keep you in a more positive mindset and help you bounce back when something shakes you. Well, I wish we could talk for another hour. I do have
Yes.
to go, but it was so wonderful catching up with you, Sylvia. I want to thank you so much for your time. I think we've got 2 follow-ups happening.
Mm.
You are like a thinking partner I'm so happy I met, and I want to
Oh,
connect
thank you,
and
Kat.
see these things that you are starting, that we grew in this conversation, and water that some more. And so I'll be following up with you because we have, you're onto something with both of these things that you mentioned for the knowledge transfer and what you did with your niece. And I would do a test pilot of some sort with you in a heartbeat just to
Yes.
like see it
Thank
come to
you.
life more. Or
Doing what you're doing, Kat. You're doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. You're about your, the podcast, a whole lot of things, and keep promoting Africa. I love your beautiful print you have on. Thank you. Thank you.
oh, thank you so much, Sylvia.
Thank
Your
you.
words mean a lot to
Thank
me.
Kat.
You were very inspiring and just food for my soul the first time we met.
Thank
And I'm so
you.
happy I got to bottle some of this and share it
Yes.
with others.
Yes.
Everyone's been here.
Yes.
I've mentioned you in a few conversations after I first
Yes.
met you and leading up to today. And so now I'm happy that anyone that does tune in to be like,
Okay.
oh, this is Sylvia. So this is
Okay.
Sylvia, everyone. I'm so happy.
Okay.
Guys, thank you so much. All right, bye, guys.